Hello, everyone. What's happening? And welcome to Internet Dads. Spencer.
Rory, we're back.
We are back. How you doing?
Listen, I'm fine, mate. I'm very settled in my environment right now. You are in week 2 of being a parent of 2. How are you doing?
I'm in the trenches.
Still in the trenches?
I am in the trenches.
Is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
No, it feels... Do you know what it feels like? It feels like I've already kind of succeeded and won World War One. I've already, got through the first leg of my adult life. And, Clementine, I succeeded. Victory. Neville Chamberlain. Is that right?
Chamberlain was before World War II. He was the appeasement. Okay. Yeah, he was appeasing Hitler.
Right.
And then Winston Churchill came in and sorted
saw us through. Right. Well, now I'm
If you believe the history they teach you in English school.
Now I'm back in the trenches again. World War II is fully underway, and it feels like I'm losing at the moment.
And now they've got proper aeroplanes. They've got blitzkrieg.
Yeah,
they've got bombs
yeah. You got to watch it. You got to watch it. The Maginot Line will not hold, and I am struggling because it's got really intense. She's wonderful, Pandora. She's calm, but it's wild. It's got to the stage where, like a mate of mine said, you can still kind of do anything, can't you? You can do everything that you ever did. You can still, go to work. You can still go out. You can still.
Who is this person?
Yeah, like a mate who actually has a baby, like a good friend of mine who is ironically currently in Las Vegas, which kind of tells you how it works. And he's got a young baby. He's got a 5-year-old and a 5-month-old.
Okay,
but I kind of agree that you can, but it's just ruined. Do you know what I mean? Like everything that you can do, you can do.
Well, we talked a bit, didn't we, about the guilt that comes along with stuff, which is definitely something I struggle with. If you can even get out to do it, but I just constantly find myself in a state of. If you do, it does get on top of you and you get a little bit kind of flustered by it, you just have to remind yourself this is a phase.
Yeah.
I saw something, I know it's like you got this Instagram sort of inspiration porn basically that you can find, but basically it isn't for us these next few years.
Yeah, no.
It's not about us. I know it sounds really, but it isn't.
But you can't even snatch. What I found like almost revealing about it was you can't even snatch just a little bit of time for it to be yours. Like, for example, Victoria had a birthday recently. We tried to go out for it. When I say go out, I mean a 3:00 Pizza Express jaunt. It was probably the worst hour that I've had for a year. It was horrible.
It was just you two?
No, 4 of us. And it was a disaster. It was horrible.
We literally
ruined.
went to Pizza Express 2 weeks ago for Alex's birthday.
Did you do the same thing?
Yeah.
Because they give you the crayons.
This is not a sponsorship, by the way.
No, I wish it was.
Very open to it.
Yeah. I think it's because they give you the crayons. Lots of children are welcome. It was just terrible. It was horrible. It was ruined. The entire experience was just terrible. And I've now decided that I'm never going out until Pandora is walking. I'm just not going out anymore. It's just horrible.
Wow.
So
isn't there a show called Not Going Out?
Yeah.
It's Lee Mack.
Lee Mack and
it's not about kids.
Sally. Yeah, Sally Hawkins. Yeah.
Outnumbered is probably the one we need to watch
mate,
for research.
It's honestly so tough. But we're getting through it. We are getting through it, and this podcast is feeling like a therapeutic opportunity for me. So I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate the audience who are one of the Dad Diaries that's come through. I think it's great, and we can almost build an episode around this. And thank you so much for getting these in, by the way. But what do you think to this, Spence? Hello, long-time fan of you both. I'm not a father, nor expect to be anytime soon, hopefully. Although, even after one episode, I'm finding the tales and honesty rather interesting. I was thinking the other day whilst trimming my nails about how my dad once told me cutting your fingernails should never take more than 1 cut per finger, and it pops into my head every time I'm doing so. Not only do I think this isn't true, possibly due to my fingers growing since I was around 6 years old, but with hindsight, he probably never realised that it's something I will always remember. I find it so odd, of all the great things that he's ever said to me, this is the one that I held on to. Do you dads have anything that sticks out to you from your parents that's bizarre? And is there any fear about choice words and how your speech will be remembered?
I think that's a great dad diary. First of all, I think we've got to start with the most important thing. It definitely takes more than 1 cut per fingernail.
I mean,
right?
It definitely takes 3.
Unless you've got those curved fingernail cutters or something,
No.
like perfectly on your fingers.
No, it's
that's
3.
Awful advice. Sorry to your dad who said that.
Yeah.
And maybe it was aimed at very young children cutting their fingernails, which really, I cut my boy's fingernails. He's not doing them himself yet. And I have, by the way. Have you done that where you cut it too short and it bleeds and you're like, oh my God.
You can get some of the skin.
Terrible
You can get skin, I know.
My boy actually doesn't want me to cut his fingernails.
Do you know they freak me out as well? You know, nails, they really do freak me out. Like, have you ever seen the film Syriana? George Clooney, Syriana.
Yes, many years ago.
There's a scene in that film, right, where Mark Strong, brilliant actor, British actor, effectively steals the film. He's in it for like 2 scenes, steals the film, and he plays like a torturer. and there's a nail scene. And it just makes me go like, it's the worst thing that could ever happen to me. In my like, just don't mess it up. Like I'm so precious when I'm doing it with Clementine or Pandora's nails.
I've actually
and
got
my
no,
own.
I've got no cuticle on this hand. This is a massive like tangent here.
Why?
But in year 8 music, you had the music room, like you've got the thick doors.
Yeah.
Soundproof doors.
Yeah. Oh no.
So I was in a room with some lads. I can't remember. We were doing some music, and the music teacher said something to us and then slammed the door on his way out, not realising that my phone was there. The music room door smashed it. I actually had no nail on the phone for like a year. It went all black. And I actually ended up taking it off with pliers years later because it was just dead. Plied it off and then it started growing back, but it never have returned the cuticle. So that's really not helpful in regards to your dad diary.
That's an awful story.
Yeah, and the music teacher, he lived to see another day. No punishment for him.
No, things like that, they always stick with me. Do you remember Darius Vassell?
Of course, yeah.
Darius Vassell, Villa, England.
He had a bit of a hotspot scoring streak for England, didn't he?
He did. I think he scored a great goal for England against Turkey, a very significant goal. But he had a blister under his toenail, and he decided to take his Black and Decker drill. Genuinely, this is a story, and it just freaks me out. It just upsets me, like thinking about it. I probably think about it once a day, and like my distortion and sort of intrigue as to how he managed to do it just upsets me.
Yeah, let's not take that as good medical advice.
No, I mean it's the worst medical advice I've ever heard anybody.
And again, other sort of worktops are available, but if Black and Decker want to get in touch, we're open to it.
But it's 3. So your dad telling you that.
Yeah.
The point isn't necessarily
no
how many. The point is that he's told you something that has really resonated.
Yeah.
And stayed with you for a long time.
I think about this quite a lot. I think we've established one thing on this podcast already, is that I think about a lot of things quite a lot. And I think about what are the things my dad said to me or mum to stay with me. How deliberate were those things? I think about everything I say, particularly to my 4-year-old, and how that might be remembered because they've got such good memories, kids. And ultimately, I think that is a combination of, well, it's mainly they just don't have anything else in their brain to remember. They haven't got that long-term memory. So when they hear something new, that sticks in a way that it probably doesn't for us as adults. So I'm super conscious of that. So I've started thinking about these little rules of thumb and things. Like I'm really quite conscious about what I eat, for example. So my oldest is quite into that, to the point where like he's now really good. If someone offers him a treat, he'll look at me and he'll be like, do I want this? I don't want this. I'll have one tomorrow or something. And he's like, you don't want to go too hard on that stuff. We're too young, and it's, you're young, you can get away with eating stuff you probably can't at our age. But I am trying to be quite conscious of that advice. But thinking about my dad, there's a couple that stand with me. One, we used to always have to wash the cars and stuff for a bit of pocket money, right? And a couple times we probably was phoning it in a little bit, not doing a great job, right? And my dad would come out and he'd just be like, this isn't good enough. And he'd be like, if your job is worth doing, it's worth doing well. And that was something he'd said to me probably a number of times in my childhood. If a job is worth doing, it's worth doing well. And it always stuck with me. And it meant that now I do have that kind of sort of perfection. I don't get into something. I'm not saying I do loads of stuff, but if I get into something, I want to do it to the best possible way it can be. We've spoken, haven't we? Building this podcast and things. I've been like, I'm only doing it if we can really do it.
Completely.
And that's like something my dad instilled in me for sure. And he is I think with these things, it's really about what you do more than what you say. And my dad exemplified that with the way he worked in his businesses and the attitude he took in them and everything he did. You know, he's a big runner, ran marathons and all these sorts of things. And he was always doing everything he could to do the best he could. So that like genuinely is one of the main things. But I'm also someone that's always sort of sought that advice. So I remember when I finished university, my dad came to pick me up, took me to Pizza Hut. See, it's not a Pizza Express, Dad, because we talked about their rivals. Took me to Pizza Hut in Reading, because that's where I went to uni, sat me down, and I said to him, it wasn't like this father-son, like, you know, moment that he was trying to impress on me. I saw it as that. I was like, this is a big moment for me. This is my last day. I'm leaving uni. The rest of my life is in front of me. I want some advice. So I said to my dad, just give me, like, just what comes to your head. When I say to you, I just want advice. I don't care what you say. I don't care how you say it. Just give me the good stuff. Because we've never really had that upfront conversation. And he said to me, hopefully he doesn't mind me saying this, but he said to me basically, don't settle down too early. That was his advice at that point. He's like, the world's an oyster. Go and do what you want to do. Don't settle down too early. And you know, he always had a bit of a joke with me about me not having a plan. That was a joke he used to put in my every birthday card. Like, even though you don't have a plan for life, because I never did have a plan what I was going to do. But that same conversation, and it shows you where my head was at the time. So I was doing YouTube. I was doing stand-up comedy. I was doing various like presentery things, trying to at least. Had no idea what the future held, had no success in those industries really, but clearly had some sort of internal motivation that was about, I wouldn't say being famous, because I never really cared about being famous, but it was about achieving acclaim. I needed a group of people, unnamed, unfaced people, to tell me I was good, wherever that came from, right?
Validation, just validation.
External validation is the best way to put it. And I said to my dad, don't know how I came up with this, and I said, Dad, would you rather have everyone in the world know who you are, but half of them hate you, half of them love you, or 100 people know who you are and they all love you? And my dad, no hesitation, just said, definitely the last one. Like 100 people. I don't need more than 100 people to know who I am, and everyone loves me. And I was like, you are so wrong, Dad. What are you talking about? If everyone in the world knows who you are, you're going to be earning money, you're going to be doing well, and if they hate you, who cares? But I was basically like, that is a little bit like what celebrity is like, isn't it, for a lot of people? Now, I'm like, my dad was right. I think completely differently now. It shows you how much you changed.
I think it's easy for you to think he's right when you've already had the former, though.
Well, I certainly haven't had everyone in the world.
No, you've had your version of that, though.
Yeah, I had a little bit of that.
Millions of subscribers. Like you've had an experience of that.
But there's no way that's a healthy answer, regardless of whether you had it or not. There's no way a healthy answer is to be happy that half the world hate you. That is not the answer of a person who's got his priorities right, in my opinion. And that shows you, so I'm saying I'm in a better place now.
Right.
And you have to be what you have to be in life. Everything's cause and effect. You are the way you are. I'm sure we'll get into it today. Whatever reason I had those motivations.
But the motivation is success. That's why. The reason why you...
What I deemed as success was notoriety in my brain at that point. Plenty of people like my dad would never have looked at it like that.
So you've effectively... You disagree with your dad, but you've now...
100% with him on it. Yeah. And that in the space of 15 years.
Yeah.
But I've been like that probably for 5 years, I'd say.
Right.
But
it's a big decade.
The reason, big
decade.
The reason I bring up that story though is like, and this is no like negative reflection on my dad. I have no complaints with my upbringing whatsoever. I love my parents. I think it was fantastic. But I didn't have a lot of that to go off.
Yeah.
My dad led by example.
Yep.
And they were very, I wouldn't say hands off, but they were very allowing us to make decisions from an early age, kind of letting us do our own thing, which has 100% led me into the sort of personality I am now, which is very much everyone should be able to do what they want to do. Very like...
Oh yeah, it's totally shaping, isn't it?
Yeah,
the way that your parents treat you, which is why I think once you become a dad, it really does echo quite how powerful the position is. Because the people that we are today, the people that I am, the values that I have, the way that I view the world almost, is totally shaped. It's not necessarily a direct result of the way that my mum saw the world, but it's certainly shaped that way. It's certainly skewed that way.
This is what I'm fascinated by, is how like your parents go through something. So let's use my parents as an example, and I do really want to hear about your interpretation of this as well, because I know you've got a sort of, you've touched upon it in an earlier episode, a different relationship with your dad. But so let's take my parents, right? So my mum and dad, sort of working class background, absolute grinders. My dad had like 2 or 3 businesses by the time he was like 18. He was working one in the day, another one in the evening. He'd done everything. He was doing burger vans. He owned a hairdressers. He was an apprentice gas and heating engineer. He was buying houses like with no money, like all this sort of, just an absolute do it, just make just yeah, exactly, just get it done. And it's so, I don't know where that motivation came from, man, because like all his mates weren't doing that stuff. He wasn't around people doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And but so that's he obviously wanted to get from somewhere to somewhere else, right? And he's been successful in that. And he's provided for his kids. He's done an amazing job, like as my mum has as well. But in doing that, you basically guarantee your kids are not going to be like you were, don't you? Like, for example, my dad was able to put all 3 of us to some point of our education, at least in private school. You know, we didn't want for things. You know, my dad and mum probably had a slightly different experience to that. But then those environmental factors make us different. Like, I am someone who've spent my whole adult life being preoccupied with the sort of philosophies of the world and like how to be happy. My mum and dad didn't have the luxury of worrying about being happy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what experience you go through, and now I'm the way I am because of that. And am I going to make? And we talked about it in a previous episode. Certain decisions in my life to try and help my child. He's not going to end up like me.
No.
He's going to end up whatever the next.
No, but
thing
you as much as your life won't be the same as your dad's. Your values and your approach can be certainly a shadow of.
And that's what I think is so challenging for people. We're talking about like very, very wealthy individuals, not my experience, but very, very wealthy individuals. How do you make your kids hungry? How do you keep your kids humble? And all these things which they probably were in order to achieve that success.
Yeah,
But
I mean, invariably you don't.
No.
Invariably, the story goes that the grandparents often have nothing. The generation below get everything, and the grandkids blow it all.
Yeah.
And the story repeats. Yeah. I think it can certainly work like that. I had a similar thing with my mum. Like, I'd say that there were two. You know, when you were sort of saying the way that it is with your dad, I think it's quite interesting if there's like something positive, but also something not negative, but something that you don't necessarily want to pass. See, because do you know what I found recently? My mum instilled so many brilliant values in me, and I am so full of admiration for her approach. Single parent in Kilburn, in a high rise, with a son, like it's awful. It's an awful setup, you know. But I had an incredibly happy childhood. She gave everything. She worked like with this work ethic that was ridiculous. She's basically, if you watch any TV show from the late 80s, early 90s, my mum's on it, but in the background. She was a like relentless worker with a son. You know, I spent a lot of time at my nan's, obviously, who again was in a high rise, but in Kilburn. But again, it was like a happy time. And so much of that work ethic, that sort of family unit, that sacrificing yourself for your family, I think is such an admirable quality and something that I will certainly do.
Yeah.
There is one thing that I've learned quite recently, primarily because I have a 6-year-old now, that I am not trying to pass on. There's one thing.
What's that?
My mum, again, probably because there wasn't a paternal figure around. I was with my granddad till I was about 12, but he was no good, really. You know, so I lived with him a lot, and I used to have to hide. I'd be playing out. I remember hiding. If I saw his cab pulling in, because I knew he'd get out drunk and he'd start shouting about. I tried and like make my friends. I'd go, come over here, and try and get away from him, sort of getting out of the cab and going mad. But the one thing that I've just had, my mum would always make sure, if they hit you, hit them back. If they don't let anyone, you know, because I was tiny. I had no siblings. I had no dad. My mum she'd always say, like, peacock, up, you can stand strong and be on the front foot. It's the one thing I'm not doing. So Clementine told me about a little altercation that she had at school. I mean, it's incredibly insignificant, but an altercation. I made sure that the counsel that I provided was not, you do not hit. Like, the one thing that we do not have is any form of, she's 6, right? But violence. That's never the answer.
Would you, and listen, I really want to hear you finish that point. I have literally said the same thing your mum said to my little boy, by the way. I'm going to be honest.
So have you gone the way that my mum said? Yeah, because there isn't a right and wrong.
I was going to ask you, would it be different if you had a son?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. And is that because of an experience you had or anything?
Yeah, it's because being on the front foot in today's society, look, when I was born, it was probably, like, the world was very different. But being on the front foot in today's society, I don't necessarily think it's going to stand you in good stead. But when I was young, my mum was do you know what I can remember? I can remember a sort of vague incident where something happened with a kid in the flats, and I've run back to my flat, and I'm looking through the letterbox. Right, I've got in my house, locked the door, I'm looking through the letterbox. Like that, my mum came in the passage. I mean, what's going on? And there was nothing. She was like very close, going, get out there and sort it out. And you know, she wasn't. She was doing it for my furtherance,
to make me, you could take on the world.
Yeah. And in a way, it has stood me in good stead, because I do have that attitude. When I'm out now, I kind of do feel very confident. I feel very, very. I don't know. I've never been intimidated by. I don't necessarily mean physical situations. I have, but certainly not professional situations. I felt confident, and that would be part of that upbringing.
But it's also a little bit of proof of concept of the whole cycle we were talking about earlier, right? Your mum had to do both parental jobs, right? And she had to arm you with the skills.
Exactly.
So she said, well, I need to make this guy tough.
Exactly, which would have fallen under the remit of a dad in a conventional family.
But then you've developed that skill, and now you've got the self-confidence to say, and the environment around you to say, my daughters don't need to do that, because actually they're safe. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't make your mum wrong.
So are you saying to your older boy at the moment, and presumably your younger boy when he gets to an age, are you saying occasionally we may have to hit back?
So my stance on this comes from, again, advice I received from my dad as well. So my dad always said to me, never hit someone first. He also said that. He said, never hit someone first, because he used to say, look, you punch the guy and he hits the deck and smashes his head on the pavement. By the way, this actually happened to a mate of mine. whose life was irrevocably changed at university, and he got beaten up outside of a club. And he said, you punch someone first, no matter if you think you're right or wrong, you could do some serious damage, and if you don't mean it, and your life's over. But he also said, you do punch when they punch you.
Yeah.
And now I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but when you do martial arts, which obviously I've touched on, I've started to do, they will always caveat everything they say about self-defense. The best defense is to run away. And I do believe that. The best defense is to run away. If you're in a situation you know you can't win and you don't want to be in that aggressive situation, you should run away. You should get the hell out of it. If you're a younger child, you should get help, get teachers, whatever those things are. My, I guess, oversimplified way of saying it is if they hit you, hit them back, is more a case of if there's no alternative.
Yeah.
So if you're in a situation you're at school, for example, and the teacher's not protecting you, or there's no one around, and you are in a situation where you could get really hurt, in that situation, and I have done this a few times in my childhood, you just go crazy. I know it sounds a little bit mental.
Windmilling.
You just make them think this is not the kid to pick on.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want my kids to ever be in that situation.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't want them to ever be the ones picking on people.
Yeah.
So please don't misinterpret this, anyone watching, as me telling people to go and pick on, but it's the opposite of that. It's a survival method. And it's one that I had to develop, quite frankly. And I did. And I'm not going to go into detail of things I may or may not have done to make sure people shouldn't pick on me. But let's face it, I left a mark, let's put it that way. And I don't want that ever to happen to anyone. But you also have to be realistic. Like, a lot of the things we think protect us in life, they're not real. We're still animals. We're still animals. And if people want to hurt you, you need to protect yourself. And hopefully that means getting the hell out of it.
Yes.
That situation.
Yes.
But, and I don't mean to generalize here at all, but maybe it is different advice if I had a daughter. But it probably is. But then again, if I had a daughter, I'd be taking her to jiu-jitsu as well. There's no way I would not be. In fact, I'd be more on top of that.
Really?
Because women have got to be able to protect themselves. There's a lot of bad people out there.
I do completely agree. There's a balance, isn't there? There is such a balance.
You've got to make sure your children are kind in their heart. Because this is something I think about a lot. I know I keep taking it back to jiu-jitsu, but this is why I'm so fascinated by martial arts at this point in my life. It's not a sport, it's a lifestyle, and it's a way you think about everything. And sometimes you go, and this could be the same if you're doing MMA or you're doing boxing or whatever. Some people want to fight to win. Some people want to fight because they need to hurt someone, because they have hurt in their hearts, right? I want to learn to fight so I never have to fight. My motivation is completely different. I want to learn to fight so I know that I can protect the people around me if they need to be. I have no interest in showing aggression towards someone unless it's to get out of a bad situation. Yeah. I do know. I've been asked to do fights on these books, and I've said I've got no beef with anyone. I don't want to fight. Yeah. But
would you do it? Would you do the old mitzvahs?
No, I would maybe do jiu-jitsu if they were doing that. Yeah. But I don't really have any interest in it. I've got no motivation to hurt someone. I have signed up to compete in jiu-jitsu, and I want to compete to see where I am and to have something to aim and train towards. But I do think I'll probably not be as effective as other people because I won't want to hurt the person opposite me.
Yeah. You'll be a delicate martial artist.
Jiu-jitsu, to win it, you do have to be prepared to break arms and not, and put people unconscious and all these sorts of things. Ultimately, that's what you're trying to do in that sport. But anyway, there's a lot of different mentality to how you approach that. I think everyone should be able to defend themselves. I think everyone needs to be able to use their body and protect themselves and protect people that need protecting. But you can be a very peaceful person and still be that way. A lot of the main, the true martial artists of the world are at peace. Look at Muhammad Ali.
Incredible.
He didn't want to go to war, man. I got no quarrel with the Viet Cong. And he lost his license over it, and he lost the prime of his career over it because he didn't want to go and hurt people he had no beef with. Yeah. But he's one of the most lethal weapons in the history of mankind.
No, I think that's often it. But I just think that the point is very interesting. You know, I revere my mum. You know, I genuinely do. I hold her in higher regards than basically anyone else I know. And there are a million things that she taught me that I hold on to and that have affected the person that I am on a daily basis. But I did just realise, I thought, wow, this is the first time, quite recently, when I was counselling Clementine, I thought, I'm going in a different direction. I'm just doing it in a different direction.
I think it's an evolution. I think your mum set you up to succeed based on the environment you had around you. Yeah. And you're now in a different environment, and therefore you don't need to give the same advice. You don't need to look at it as right or wrong or different. You need to look at it as almost a thank you for getting me to here, and now allows me to give this advice. Yeah. But equally, I'm sure there would come a time when you would say to hit back. There has to be, doesn't there? There has to be. There does have to be.
But
getting that bit right is tough.
it's a balance.
And when they're young, you know, they don't necessarily get it. Like, great example is, like I say, I've said to my oldest before, you got bit a couple of times at nursery, and that happens all the time, by the way. Like,
they
get
love
used
it.
to that. But I was like, it kept happening, and I was like, look, at some point, if they bite you, you need to bite them back. And I know it's probably the wrong thing to say, but I was like, that kid needs to know he doesn't bite you anymore.
Did Alex support that counsel for your boy?
I wouldn't say she supported it per se, but I think
I can't imagine if I went to Victoria, if in front of Victoria, if I went to Clementine, bite them back, Victoria would just be like, "Are you mad?"
But I just think if it keeps happening, it's the same kid. That means the teachers are not looking after him. Like, and at that point, you have to take your responsibility in your own hands. But the problem with that advice, and where I'm still questioning it myself, is like, for example, he just applies that logic to everything now. So we had some friends over the other day, and one of the little girls threw a toy at him, and he's like, "Dad, can I throw the toy back?" Because I've told him that basically, haven't I, in a way, not meaning to. I'm like, no, you don't need to throw a toy back at this instance. You just need to say, make sure it's okay. Come to me if there's a problem.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give him last resort.
Yeah. The trouble is, it'd be hard for him to process that.
No, of course it is.
It's hard.
That's why I actually think you could do more damage by giving this like life advice at this age.
Well, it's interesting actually, because something came through on our Instagram account, and somebody's asked the biggest fear for your relationship with your kids in the future. Like, in terms of like the relationship now that you're cultivating, do you have like the fear that maybe one day your boys' values won't chime with yours, or do you almost see that's quite healthy?
I think values-wise, there's sort of certain inalienable values that you want your child to have. Kindness, you know, respect for the environment and the world, and not doing terrible things to people. But outside of that, you know, it could be the opposite of me. It could be some money-motivated kind of like banker in the city. If that makes him happy, I'm fine with it. I've got no problem with it. And it might be harder for us to have things in common, but that's not a problem with them if they're happy. Like, that's life. I've said for a while to people, it's a bit of a weird concept, but I've said, like, it shows you how much my mind's changed from like 15 years ago when I asked my dad that question. I said, from now on, my aim in life, or my like my measurement of success, is if when I am old and grey, I can turn up at my grandkid's house, uninvited, walk in, maybe I've got a key, sit myself on the sofa and watch TV and it not feel weird. Yeah. Now, there's a couple of things that I've come up with that. First of all, if you've got that relationship with your grandkids, it means you've got a great relationship with your kids. Yeah. Because
does this happen? Have you seen this in action? Have you borrowed this from?
I'd say I've seen other families with it.
Right.
There's the same lad, by the way, I was just mentioning, who I had kids around the other day. He's also a fan of this podcast. I've been watching them a lot. He's a hashtag legend, one of our Hall of Famers. Used to be known as the Man Mountain back in the day. His family are like my blueprint for this in many ways. Right. So I was really close to them at uni. I used to spend time there. I worked for his dad in one summer. They're super tight. They all live like sort of old school. They live really close to each other. I love it, and I don't have that experience at all. You know, outside of our nuclear family of the five of us, there wasn't a lot of closeness. Right. A couple of grandparents we were close to, but my mum and dad were very stoic, very kept themselves to themselves. Would never eat at our house or anything because they didn't want to put anyone out. Right. Like all that sort of thing, and it didn't feel that way with them. I guess I would have liked to, maybe. Yeah. I had a good relationship with my dad's mum, my nanny June, who we used to go and see every week. But I think, I guess I've seen the opposite, and I want to be super tight. And it all filters down that stuff. It means you're not, because it probably means your parents aren't close to their siblings, and it probably means you're not close to your cousins. Yeah. And all these things. And I think you can reinforce those things and just do the same way. Yeah. Or you can try and say, no, I want to do it differently.
I think your perception of you as a grandparent is interesting as well. I mean, my grandmother is definitely the linchpin of our family. Like, me and my mum are, every day, will talk about my nan and visit my nan. Yeah, that's like, we will both be there virtually daily. Obviously, that's taken a bit of a hit since Pandora came along and made me nocturnal. But one of my major priorities per day will be getting to my nan's, and same for my mum. One of her major priorities per day will be getting to her mum. And I think that when you hear that, you know, when there's that sort of a relationship, because remember, we're small. My mum doesn't have any brothers and sisters. I don't have any brothers and sisters. Right. So we're sort of 3 generations, but that's sort of it within our realm. When I hear people talking like that about their grandparent, you know, when it's like a priority, I always rate them. I always rate the you know, if there's like,
you've been brought up, because that's a really important trait of yours. Yeah. And I don't mean this in any sort of ill comment towards anyone in my family at all. I love everyone in my family, but that wasn't fostered in me. I'd say
Right.
the only one that was fostered in was probably my nan. My dad's dad died, so we used to go and see my nan. We see her anyway, obviously,
Mm.
but we go every Sunday, and there was that connection there. But and this isn't a failing on my parents. If anything, I think it was an issue with my grandparents on my mum's side. They were just quite standoffish.
That
And,
generation can be that way. Though.
yeah, I mean, they went
sometimes
through
it's
a lot.
their choice.
My granddad wrote a little book about his life actually, and I got to read it. Fascinating man, He was Prince Philip's driver in the
No
Navy,
way.
and then they were stationed in Malta together on the same boats. If you watch like the what's the royal family show, The Crown,
Yeah.
and it's a whole bit about Philip when he's on the boat. My granddad was on that boat, and he was
Oh.
he was Philip's driver. So much so that I tweeted it when Prince Philip died, and I got asked for a quote from the BBC about it because my granddad was a big fan of Prince Philip because he literally worked with him,
Wow.
and he had a fascinating life, and he went through some horrible stuff. I mean, we should maybe have to get permission from my mum maybe, but talk about an episode, some of the stuff he went through as a child, 100% would have informed the way he felt about people.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one thing I'll say to you. When he died, at his funeral, my uncle, his son, my mum's brother, when he was doing a speech about this man, my granddad Ron, he said, he taught me so much. For example, don't let people get too close. That was one of the things he was taught by his dad.
Yeah.
I think that's so sad.
Yeah, exactly. That's almost not, in my opinion, the meaning of life. Like the meaning of life
No.
is people, isn't it?
But
It's people, experiences, love. Like it's welcoming people in.
And I think that's what I was going to say about your situation. Not that I could ever pretend to understand what it's like for such a different experience, but everything's cause and effect, right? So some would see you as, you had a smaller family unit, like you say, but your bond is probably so much tighter than those with the bigger ones. Or like, I think we have in my family, a very traditional setup, 3 kids, parents, in touch with all the family, all that sort of thing. But was the bond as tight outside of the family? Probably nowhere near as tight as yours is, say, with your nan.
Yeah,
for
I think
example.
it can have that impact because of circumstances, because it all went a bit wrong with my mum and dad, and my dad wasn't behaving at all well, by his own admission now, I'm sure, but it wasn't behaving at all well. I ended up living at my nan's. I ended up, it wasn't right for me to be where I was. I ended up at my nan's. So, when my nan was 50, I was living with her. And I was sort of part of her everyday life. And she used to have a little job. She used to go into the West End, like Vigo Street, Savile Row, around there, like selling sandwiches. That was her job. I went with her all the time. We went from the stage where I was going with her in my school uniform to driving her down there to drop her off, like that whole period when I was living with her. So, now she's 91 and she's struggling. And of course I'm there because when I was 7, I lived there. It was like, it does create that bond that is just totally unbreakable. And you're right. I think that doesn't happen if my mum is one of 4 because they'd all, it would all be different. And then if I was one of 4, it would be different. So, yeah, I think the smaller family unit can definitely intensify the relationship.
And then if you are people, and I think as men nowadays, this podcast is proof of this, we are much more open about talking about things and, being vulnerable, whatever you want to say. If you're that kind of person now, it gives you the chance with your kids to be very deliberate in what you want to create, and you can, for example, choose to have more than one child because you give a sibling.
Yeah.
You can have a sibling. You get to see someone experience that. You get to think about, I guess you haven't got, your kids aren't going to have cousins on your side, are they? But
no, they will. They're actually, Clementine and Pandora will be getting a cousin in March, I think.
That's great. So that's on Victoria's side.
That's on Victoria's
side. So that's amazing. And then you've got a choice to make is how much can you foster that relationship?
Exactly.
Like when Alex and I lived in London and we needed to move out because we weren't making any money from YouTube and I'd quit my job, we moved to, we didn't know where to move to because she's from South London, I'm from Essex, and Essex was one option, but like all our mates still lived in London at this point. And we just didn't have a calling to go anywhere particular place. So we moved to Hertfordshire to be down the road from my brother. Yeah. Because my brother, it wasn't even working with me. It's my older brother. Wasn't even working with me at this point, but it ended up doing very soon after that. But, he was my confidant, my advisor and everything. He ended up doing that professionally. But before that, he was doing it anyway for no money.
Yeah.
And it was just like the general decision that there was a very deliberate one, which was basically very premature because it was years before we had kids. Was that I want my kids to be really close to their cousins. Yeah. And I knew that he'd have kids at some point. I was like, well, let's see if there's a life for us in that part of the world. And it will almost ensure that. Yeah. It was a deliberate choice to move there.
Yeah. It's so important in it, that family unit. It really is.
Yeah, and I think like I sometimes look at my family and think we're not as close as other people's families, but then I think actually to the outside eye we must look so close because we have this football club
Yeah.
we're all involved in
I
together.
was about to say the exact
We've
opposite.
all
Yeah.
worked together. Like
Yeah.
Saunders, Seb, and I have all worked together in multiple different ways.
And your dad.
Yeah, and obviously
And
like the
your
West
dad.
Ham season ticket, all these
Yeah,
things, you know. So we are close. It's just we're close, I guess, in our own way. I do sometimes wonder if things like the football club hadn't have come along, how much would we have seen each other? Because we've all got our own things going on. You know, I don't know what I'd have done if I hadn't started that team. So you just never know. But what I do know is I love that they're involved, and I think I said to it on the last episode that's the most joy I get from our football team is the happiness it brings people in around it, including my family.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a really important thing.
It
But
looks truly wonderful. This has been quite deep.
powerful episode, and all come off the back
All
of
come
a,
off
of
the
a
back
dad
of
diary.
the Instagram.
Keep them
In
coming.
fact, there's a couple of other dad diaries that I might just whiz through.
Let's do it.
This one definitely aimed at you because massive fan of you guys, which I think is being kind to me. That's you.
You've
And
got fans. You've got
followed for nearly a decade. That has to be you, unless
This is actually
he was
just
an avid fan of EastEnders.
or they've just been following you down the road.
Just
maybe.
follow, yeah, absolutely. It's very possible. So it says, I was told yesterday by my wife that we are expecting our first child. Congratulations. I'm 23, 24 this year, and I'm slightly worried about it all. I'm just like Spencer said, that I always imagine myself with kids, but at the moment, we've just moved into our new house that we bought, and I don't know how good a partner, a dad, and a homeowner that I can be. So I'm not sure if you can give me some tips on the first few months of pregnancy and how to not go crazy. Thank you. Sending love from Poland.
Oh, nice. So is that a Polish viewer? Is it?
Yeah, or an English person who's moved to Poland.
Well, first of all, 100 lat, nie żyje nam 100 lat, 100.
How you doing that?
Yesterday, nie żyje nam, etc., etc.
How you doing that?
Well, Alex is Polish, isn't she? We sing that. Well, her dad is. We sing that every birthday. They'll know. If you're
They'll know.
You know.
Okay,
My kid's eligible for Poland,
Very impressive.
America, or England. So
Why America? What's the American league?
Because Alex's mum's American. So if they're good at football, they'll play for England.
Right.
If they're rubbish,
Play for America.
or if they're not so good, Poland. If they're really bad, America.
America, yeah. That's great. It's great to have all bases covered.
Exactly, got literally everything covered. But no, so yeah, congratulations. That's very exciting. Obviously, a bit of a younger dad than you and I both experienced.
Also bought a house already.
Doing well.
Doing
Obviously
really well.
Poland though, maybe a bit cheaper. No disrespect.
Yeah,
But
might be a bit
cheaper to get on the ladder
cheaper,
there.
but it's impressive. 23, 24 this year, home already.
you got a lot sorted, mate. You got more than I had.
Better
at that
position
age.
that I was in. Yeah.
Exactly. So first of all, well done. We're not going to be great on the tips front here.
Speak
Not
for yourself,
really what
mate.
we do.
Speak for yourself.
I would say that.
I can tell you loads of what not to do.
Well, there you go. Exactly. No, I mean, you probably agree with this. I think the pregnancy stage goes real quick. And whilst all these things you're going through for the first time can seem quite overwhelming and you're like, oh my God, do this, that. Like, each new bit that comes, the last bit feels like it was really easy. Do you know what I mean? Like, so when you actually have the baby, you'll be like, oh my God, pregnancy was so good. We didn't have to do anything, really, apart from a bit of worrying, which is apparent. And then the baby comes and you actually got to do stuff. So in terms of worrying about the first few months of pregnancy, I know this probably doesn't help you, but just try and enjoy it because it will get harder than this.
Yeah.
I would say you sound like a very,
Organised
person, someone that is clearly, it's important to you that you do a good job as a parent, and that's all you can do. That's literally all you can do because no one else can tell you how to do it. Everyone's making up as they go along. You know, if your heart's in the right place, that's all you need, my friend, because when that baby comes out, you're going to just become a new Pokemon. You're going to be evolved to the next level, and you're not going to worry. You're going to have fears and concerns, but there's going to be a clear path to what you've got to do because you've got this actual physical thing that just gives you the motivation.
Yeah, I agree with every word. What I would say though about tips for pregnancy, again, this is just through my experience. Be really forgiving and kind to your wife.
Yeah.
Particularly for that, I think pre-20 weeks, they can get so sick.
Yes.
Like you have to be so understanding. You have to be so forgiving. You have to be so generous. Like just try and understand that they're going through it, man. Like their bodies are really going through it.
Oh, so true.
And just try and do more. That's my like. Like occasionally take the bins out,
Yeah,
which
take
I
the
never
bins
do.
out. Come on,
Yeah.
take the bins out.
Occasionally take the bins out.
Alex was so much worse second time round. First time,
So was Victoria.
no morning sickness, anything.
Exactly the same.
And they tell you all these things. Oh, you're morning sick this time. That means it's this gender or this gender. I don't know if there's a lot of truth to that stuff. I think it's random, if I'm honest. But yeah, like one pregnancy, this is your first, obviously, in this instance, but one can trick you in a multitude of ways. One could be rough. You think the next one's going to be rough and it's not, vice versa. Same with kids and sleep and all these things. But you're just going to have to get through it, my friend. You will do.
I just remember Victoria walking around. We went on holiday, and I just remember Victoria walking around with these wristbands. You ever seen these wristbands?
No.
It's amazing, right? Fellas have no idea what I'm talking about here. Every girl that sees a girl wearing these wristbands knows you're pregnant.
It's a pregnancy wristband.
It's not like branding yourself with pregnancy, making sure that I think they're like anti-sickness wristbands.
Right.
You should buy. That's what you should do. If your wife or girlfriend is suffering from potential morning sickness, get these bands as a gift. Just get these.
So
bands
you've got
as a
two
gift.
great pieces of medical advice. If you've got a dodgy now, get your Black & Decker out. And if you got a pregnant missus, get yourself some bands.
Get yourself some wristbands. Well, it's amazing.
I've never heard of them. They might work.
Mate,
They might work.
I'd never heard of them, but we went away. We met some people that we knew while we were away. Victoria was very early, 7-8 weeks pregnant, so we weren't telling anyone. We were a nervous wreck. I was quite terrified. Victoria was really under the weather in terms of like being morning sickness. She's got these bands on, which I have no idea what they do. The girl that we met, a girl called Chelsea, who we were kind of meeting while we were away, she looked at Victoria. She went, "Oh my God, congratulations!" It's like this bat signal.
Did the bands work for her?
Yeah, they help.
Did you ever consider the name Chelsea for a girl? You mentioned it there.
If I'd had a kid when I was 19, it would have been Chelsea. It would have definitely been Chelsea. Thank God I didn't have it. Yeah.
We were talking about that earlier. I don't know if it's one for this episode or not, but things that we thought could have been a good idea 10 years ago and maybe wouldn't be now.
Yeah.
Your
Perception. I would have definitely had a Chelsea tattoo there. God, thank God my mum didn't let me do that.
Did you actually ask to do it?
I mean, I would have done it. Two things that I really wanted when I was young. I was like talking 16, 17 here. A moped. Everyone had a moped. I was like, I need a moped. I had nowhere to go. I don't know what I was going to do.
The rockers that were the mopeds or both?
The mods were on the mopeds.
You were a bit
like
of a mod,
Quadrophenia.
right?
Yeah. But it was more like the sort of garage scene, like London garage scene. It was everyone was on a moped. It was like I would have got robbed for it. Like I don't know where I would have gone on it either. The college that I went to was like walking distance. I don't know I honestly don't know what I would have done. So the moped where I would have like definitely died, and a tattoo where I would have had to go through some sort of really painful tattoo removal surgery.
Pete Davidson's just done that. Have you seen that? So he spent 200 grand removing, and he had so many tattoos. His whole body was covered in like sort of cartoony tattoos. This is the guy who used to go out with Kim Kardashian and Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And he's just had them all removed, and it was a pretty good removal job from what I can see.
Really? 200 grand, you'd think so. Sand them off, get sandblaster.
Super painful. People don't realise it's just as painful getting them off as it is putting them on.
I hate tattoos. Like I don't understand them. I genuinely, it's like one of my weird things where I sound really old. I know you've got some dodgy. This isn't shots fired at you.
I don't take that stuff personally.
But I just don't get it at all.
But you did get it at one point.
I was 17, mate. Yeah, I was 16. I thought I was rock hard because I had like a ring on my finger and a cigarette in my mouth. It's not what I am now at all.
Well, I actually think about getting some more tattoos. I've got a couple on my left foot that are all YouTube related, and people like our friend from Poland who've been watching for a long time may know what they are.
Go on.
But I've just got one on the bottom of my foot, which is sort of like Andy from Toy Story, but about a certain character I may or may not have used to play on YouTube.
Right.
And then I've got 5-star weak foot on my left foot. Both YouTube bets that I lost, basically.
Okay. But you're going to get some more.
Alex got one as well when we just spent an Alex channel, and she lost this thing called the Spandex Cup. She had to get #TeamSpen on her foot, but she got it on her heel, and it went away after about 2 weeks.
That's wonderful knowledge. That's the best thing that I've learned today. Like, I appreciate all of the wisdom that you shared parental-wise, but knowing that if I ever had to get a tattoo, if I get it on my heel, it will rub off. That's like that's knowledge.
It's a good little advice actually for someone out there. If you find yourself in a loose end and you've lost some sort of bet, get it on the heel. It's almost like a henna tattoo, but it happened.
Really?
Trust me, I watched it. It happened. It's all on video actually. You can see it on YouTube still. But I've actually sort of thought about getting some now. I think maybe it's the start of a midlife crisis.
Yeah, don't do it, mate.
My issue with it, I'm pretty confident I want to do it. My issue is,
mate, this is bad.
As you age,
this podcast has suddenly gone in a different direction. I'm now counselling you. This is therapy for you. This is nothing to do with like parents anymore. I need to intervene here.
That we all
This
like-
is like that scene, when Chris Moltisanti comes out the bathroom and all his family is sitting there, like ready to try and get him into rehab. Like, mate, I'm here for you. You're coming out the bathroom. Do not do this.
Well, let us know. Should I get them or not? Should I get some? I've got a few ideas, but also, like, you look at David Beckham. Everyone loves David Beckham, right? But when he's 60 odd, he's got so many tattoos. That's my fear. Is what do they look like when
David
I'm 60,
Beckham
70?
is an icon, but he's really, really dumb, and that's why he's got them.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go the lengths he's gone to.
No.
He's got a lot, and he's got them like, quite high up in his neck and his face, sort of thing, and well, not his face, but I don't know how they'll look when he's older, and that's my main regret.
Tattoos. Face
Saw
tattoos.
someone today and
Face
showed it.
tattoos.
Big tattoo down here.
I liked the world when the tattoo was strictly the preserve of the lunatic. It was like, this bloke has either been a sailor in his life or in prison, and that's what tattoo was meant to be. Now you've just got like any old Tom, Dick and Harry getting tattoos. Like the tattoo used to tell you, this bloke's mad, this bloke's a sailor. Now it don't tell you nothing.
Have you ever seen the film Into the Wild?
No.
You know about that? It was a book as well. I've read the book, seen the film. I love it. It's one of my favourite films. And I won't go into it all, but there's a bit in that where he learns about carving belts. He carves into leather belts, like the story of his life. So he has little like things that are important to him, symbolism. And I've always looked at a tattoo like that. It's like a Bayeux tapestry of your life, and it can be if that is something that means anything to you. It's a way of remembering things. It's obviously a way of expressing yourself a little bit artistically. But yeah, it's very hard to get one that you're going to be happy with in 10 years, 15 years.
Do you know it used to be a rebellious thing, didn't it? It's weird because I am now the modern day rebel. I am.
Because
I do not have a tattoo, and I'm generally clean shaven. Like I'm basically the nut. Yeah, nobody's clean shaven. Literally nobody apart from me, and nobody.
You're not clean shaven right now.
Yeah,
you know
because of Pandora, man. I'm always meant to be. I barely know what day it is. I'm caffeined up to the eyeballs. I am out of it at the moment. But I would be clean shaven, and I wouldn't have a tattoo. It's a wild.
That's how you. To be fair, that's probably one of the keys to your youthful look that you have. Is the clean shaven look keeps you looking very young. Because I look so young if I go clean shaven. I literally could pass for.
You haven't been clean shaven for years.
Oh, there's a reason. Honestly, I look terrible. Whatever you think of me now, it's worse without facial hair. It's to the point where I've basically now got a moustache. Once I sort this bit out, I'll be full on mustachioed. But no, the tattoo thing's interesting with the dad's thing because one of probably the main thing that's stopping me getting them is how it might look to my kids, and that I don't want them to think.
Or parents meeting.
I don't want them to get. I don't care about that. I just don't want my kids to get tattoos just because they thought it was cool because their dad did it. I would want them to do it because they have a reason for doing it. And I still have a slight hang up about some of the other work I do as well, like present things, and if you get them in certain parts of your body, does that. But I think those stigmas are going now. I think you're seeing more and more people on mainstream television with tattoos and things. I think that is. It
would be a problem if you were an actor, although there is that special makeup.
Well, Tom Hardy's covered in tattoos.
There is that special makeup.
Well, they just remove it, don't they? I think sometimes it's CGI even. I don't know, but yeah.
Interesting. Let's go to this. Dad Diary. There's another one. Thank you for everybody, by the way, to everybody who's been sending these in. This says, all right, boys, love the new pod and congratulations, Rory, on your baby. Thank you so much. I'm 25 and a fairly new dad to an 18-month-old who, sorry to gloat, is a dream baby. I actually sleep better. Already offended by this. I actually sleep better than before as I'm not out boozing all the time. One thing I've struggled with, though, as a youngish parent and the first out of our friends to have a baby is keeping close with the lads in the group who all of a sudden have completely different lives and interests and probably don't want to hear about all the baby stuff all of the time. Unless we're talking about football, it feels like there isn't much in common anymore and we've naturally drifted. I've ended up spending most of my free time with my girlfriend's mates and trying to tell them about Arne Slot's genius and Liverpool's contract situation. It's just pointless as they really couldn't care less. I've absolutely loved being a dad and everything that's come with it, but I feel a slightly underestimated part of it is that it can be a bit isolating as a younger dad, and wondered if you have had any of these issues yourselves. Appreciate the pod, boys.
Well, I appreciate that he's classing us as younger dads as well. So I'm not sure we are really these days.
I rate that.
I rate that a lot. I mean, talk about my friend again. Once again, I did check with him. He's happy for me to talk about him on the pod. Rich, he's Man Mountain #. He's a young dad, so he's got 3 kids. His oldest is the same age as his youngest is the same age as my oldest, but he had his first around 24, 25, and the first 2 came very quick. They're about a year apart. We literally were talking about this yesterday. They're around our house and we were talking about it. And there is that. I think if you're a younger parent, you're gonna have less in common. I experience it now with my friends who haven't got kids for sure. And the younger you are, the less likely you are to have other friends. I think there's a converse side to that, which is, I think, amazing, which is you're going to be early 40s when your kids are adults. That is cool.
Yeah, you're going to reclaim your
you
life.
You could play football with them if you're into that.
Yeah.
You could, you're going to have the rest of your life ahead of you, but also you can have a genuine friendship with your kids as you're still a young man yourself. And I think that's amazing. So I think that is more than worth the trade-off. And I also think that...
they've done it right. Like, I think that way is the right way. I didn't do it that way, but I didn't have any money and I didn't go out with the right girl. Well, went out with a lunatic.
I think
so it didn't work.
You're watching, how are you?
Yeah.
I think any way is the right way. Whatever's right is right for you. To go back to David Beckham, and now I know you said he's an idiot, and maybe he didn't write it himself, but he did once come up with a gem on an Instagram post of a caption, which I really enjoyed. And I can't remember what it was about, but he said something like, "There is no right and wrong. There is just what's right for you and right for your family."
Modern day Plato.
Other people, pretty much. He was a good winger as well, Plato. Other people might perceive something you're doing as wrong, and you might perceive it as right. Like, there's obviously black and white issues, but in your life, you do what's right for you. It might be right to have kids at 25. Some people have kids at 16. Some people have kids at 50. Like, it is what it is, and you deal with what you've got. But there's a lot of positives to being a young parent. I think you're probably right.
What do you think for his situation here? Because if I think about where my priorities were lying when I was 25 years old, if one of my friends did have, in fact, one of my good friends did have a kid, I would always ask how his little girl was.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really interested. I'd go, look, mate, England are playing in Amsterdam where Wayne Rooney scored in the game. We're going to Amsterdam. Are you coming? And I would assume that he would. And if he said he wouldn't, like, he didn't come, actually.
Not understand why.
I'd just go, wait, what? Well, your kid, like, people go on holiday without children, mate. You know, it's like, I didn't get it at all.
That is what it is. It's basically hard for those people to relate because they're not going through what you're going through. So you've got a couple of options, right? You can look at it a little bit, perhaps cynically, which is that what's happening to you is going to happen to you anyway. It might happen to you at 30, it might happen to you at 35. It's just happened to you sooner. Sort of crack on and get on to the next stage of your life. Or if there's really important friendships there, I'd say two things to that. I'd say, one, if they're really good friends, they won't let you be isolated. They will check in on you and vice versa. And they'll maybe you're going through a particular stage because the kids are young, but when you come out of that, you'll get back amongst it. And then secondly, over to you is how important are these friendships to you? And if your partner understands that, you know, Alex has got a core group of friends that are really important to her and all these things. And you have to deal with that together. There's an occasion, for example, that Alex really wants to go to, but it's not very practical for us both to go. Then I'll take the hit, look after the kids to allow Alex to foster those relationships and keep those friendships strong, and vice versa.
Yeah,
you know, I've been invited to a wedding of a big YouTuber in a few months' time, and it's just no way Alex and I can both go. It's in Mexico, and you know, there's no way we can take the kids there. It's not a kid-friendly wedding, so it's like it's not an option for us both to go.
Yeah.
But one of us could potentially go. It would be me in this occasion because it's my friend. And Alex takes the hit, stays home, looks after the kids. But then if the reverse happened, I would totally do that.
Do you know in terms of like wisdom, and this is exactly what you're saying here. My wife said something to me, like, you know how David Beckham said something that you really picked up on. My wife said something to me, and this is about Pandora at the moment, right? And it totally taps into exactly what you're saying about this situation with the wedding. One of us basically has to be nocturnal at the moment, and where we're quite good, Victoria and I, is that we're both trying to do it. So I'm winning the battle. I'm saying, no, you go to bed. You had a C-section. You carried a baby for 9 months. Of course you go to bed and I'll do the nights. And I'd say that Pandora's been alive now for 10 days? I'd say I've done 8 nights. But where we're so good, and this is what Victoria said to me, and I was like, oh, God, that's really wholesome and really great for our marriage. She went, God, we're good because we both always try and put each other first. Like, we both have the fight to do the night. Like, what we're not doing is going, well, I did last night, it's your night. I did do last night, and this morning I said to Victoria, look, I can do tomorrow. It's easy for me. I'll have a little sleep in the morning. I can do tomorrow night. If you both put each other first, and that's exactly what you're saying here, this wedding has come up. Alex, her motivation will be to get you to that wedding. She'll hold the fort, allow you to go, and then equally when the situation is reversed, you'll do the same and put her first.
Yeah, and the sacrifice is that you maybe not going to be able to do them together as much as you'd like to for a certain period of your life. But again, we also got invited to another one of my friends' weddings last year in America, and we just couldn't go. Alex was it was post baby, so yeah, we had a 5-month-old as well as our oldest, and it was in America, and it was like going to be. I mean this in the nicest way possible. It wasn't going to be enjoyable for us.
No.
Like it was, I don't even know if the kids could have come. And you have to just unfortunately make that decision based on what's practical for your life at that moment. It does mean missing some things, but if there's key friends that that's what I would say to you. And this sounds a bit cold-hearted, but I would say of those friends, who are the ones you really envision getting old with, that you're going to keep in touch with when you're 40, 45, 50. It's impossible to know that, the answers to that now, but invest in the few that you can take. It's a little bit of a bleak view, but it's reality. Like, you are going to have less friends as you get older, but hopefully they're better quality.
But also, there's also a chance that some of these friends, you've gone first, but within the next 2 or 3 years, some of these friends will find themselves in the same situation as you, and then your situations will be the same, and they'll be tapping you up for advice.
Yeah, totally true. And like you say, you're going to come out of it.
You're the Sherpa leading them up everywhere.
You're going to get your life back. You're going to get your tattoos and your convertible when you're 40, like me. And you're going.
Mate, we've got to keep an eye on him. We've got to keep an eye on him. You can see where this is going.
Just to be clear, I'm not 40. I'm just saying.
No, but we're talking tattoos at the moment. We know where this ends.
I really like. You've seen the show Californication?
Yes, I vaguely remember it. David Duchovny.
Yeah, David Duchovny. It's a great show. Really like the Porsche 9. I'm not a car guy, but the Porsche 911 he has in that black convertible. I'd never get one in this country. The weather's too rubbish. But if I was in a warm country, got my cool little tattoos on here. You know, probably go Turkey, get my hair sorted, new teeth.
Mate, this is a worry.
You know, then everyone will like me.
Do you know what I didn't realise? Then everyone will like me. Do you know what I didn't realise? I'm very important to you. I'm going to be your anchor.
I usually call you something very similar to that.
And on that note, we will say thank you to everybody who's tuned in. We really do appreciate your time. We really appreciate that you have tuned into this episode. Please give it a like. Please do click subscribe. It massively helps us out. And let us know your dad diaries for next week. See you on the next episode.
Cheers, guys.